Many of us are aware of the 7 Hermetic principles that govern this universe. But there is an 8th, lost Hermetic principle. So today, it is my honor to share with you the lost principle of care. The 7 Hermetic principles have become popular within the spirit of this age due to the Hermetic revival that is currently taking place. Now, if you would like to learn more about the 7 Hermetic principles, you could watch my collab with After School, where I do a full breakdown of each Hermetic principle and how it plays out inside our lives. And within this Hermetic revival, we are now having ancient knowledge resurface for us to learn once more and for us to synthesize into a holistic worldview. And with this, now comes the resurgence of the lost 8th Hermetic principle. And the 8th lost principle is considerably the most important because it is the one that is the driving force for all of creation. So this 8th lost principle is the principle that manifests energetically into all of the other 7 Hermetic principles. It fuels all of creation, and that's why it is called the generative principle. The 8th Hermetic principle is known as the generative principle. It's called generative because it generates, it creates. So it generates all the other laws, all the other 7 Hermetic principles. So, as we know from the term Genesis, Genesis is to create. So you have Genesis, which means creation. But Genesis means to generate. So this 8th lost principle is the generative principle. It is the one that generates. And therefore, it is the fuel that is generating all the other laws of this universe. Now, the really fun thing about esotericism is that no symbol and no concept has only one singular meaning. So when it comes to the generative principle of care, it's going to mean more than one thing depending on what dimension of reality that we're tapping into it. So what this means is that the generative principle that drives all the other 7 Hermetic laws at the highest level is the generation. It's the generative energy that is fueling all of creation. It's known as care. And what that is at this highest level of its true meaning is that it is conscious sentience. Now, when we think of consciousness, we could have that mean many things. We could have that mean our awareness. We could have that mean universal awareness. We can have that mean a knowing. Now combine that with sentience. And what you have is essence that gives life and animates anything that it places its observation on. So if we were to look at all of existence as imagination, then care would be the energy of thoughts, sentience, and will that get focused onto one part of all of existence. And when the combination of these 3 energies, thoughts, sentience, and will, get concentrated like a laser beam onto one part of all of existence, one part of imagination, it becomes nurtured into life. This is how reality is created. This is how being becomes. And this is the true meaning of the feminine principle. It is to nurture something into reality through attention by directing the energies of care. Now, from this zoomed out macrocosm perception of what sentience means, it is a little different than how we experience sentience here in our physical reality. But it's not that far off. Sentience at this higher level of reality that I'm referring to is a driving force for creation. It is this generative principle because conscious sentience is what creates the ability for there to be existence. So care is what creates existence. Do you see now the chain of effect? Care is this conscious sentience that fuels the act of creation by what it cares about. So, how we experience that here in our reality is as attention. Care is the generative principle of where attention goes, energy flows. And care is what creates that flow of awareness and that flow of our attention. We give attention to the things that we care about. And that's why, from the highest level of reality, that attention is what is called conscious sentience. Do you see that combination? Conscious sentience is what creates our attention. Because when we are paying attention to something, we are caring about it. And when we're paying attention to something, that means that our energy is focused in that direction. So, one could say that existence is when we are giving our attention to something, because it wouldn't exist if it wasn't being consciously observed and given its attention for our observation, for our care to flow in that direction. That's what creates. And that's why it's called the generative principle. It's the principle that creates. So if the generative principle is care, and care is what creates this whole universe, and care is what creates into our physical dimension, how we experience care here is a little different. Because what I had been referring to right now is the as above reflection of care. And with the as above, you always have a as below. So as above, care is created through conscious sentience that is paying attention and flowing through that attention, and it's manifesting into creation and Genesis. Now here, when we are in the as below, now that principle of care is still taking place, but at a microcosm level. So it's taking place always, all around us. It's omnipresent. But in our microcosm lives, how we experience care is what we are cultivating attention to. So it's what we are paying attention to, because when we are paying attention to something, we are directing our consciousness there. We're directing, therefore, our energy in that direction. So we're paying attention to something, and whatever it is what we care about, because we are taking actions towards it. So the other reason why care creates everything, care is Genesis, care is the generative principle, is because it is what you are taking actions toward. So care is the original Holy Trinity that all other trinities are based off of. The trinity of thought, sentience, and will, or in this case, actions. All three of these forces are different aspects of one another. They are different perspectives of consciousness. Your focus and attention is so strong that it literally acts like a magnet to pull forth whatever you are directing your energy of thoughts, emotions, and actions toward. If you are putting your attention on ignorance, then that is what will grow. If you are putting your attention on evolving, then that is what will grow. This is so embedded within creation that the color green represents care. And green is the color to spiritually represent the forces of birth and creation, aka to grow. So you have consciousness and sentience. Those are creating this reality through care. But now in this dimension, now in the physical dimension, Care needs that third aspect of action. So what we are paying attention to is what creates our reality, but also because it's creating our reality because we are placing our actions in that direction. So care requires our action. And because it requires our action, that is why we are able to create something, or as we know in this age, we're able to manifest something. That's why care is the generating creative principle. It's because whatever you are focusing and paying your attention to, energy flows in that direction, but it doesn't stop there. It's because when you're focusing on something, you're nurturing it. And that nurture is an action step. You are taking actions, and those actions is what is cultivating or nurturing it. Just like how if you show care to a plant, you're going to send it water. That's the action step. So do you see how you're nurturing that plant through the action of watering it? You're nurturing it, you're cultivating it by giving it your attention, but your attention is making you take an action towards it of care. And that action is you're not just watching the plant and going, oh, you're so lovely. You're so lovely. I love you so much. You don't have anything that you need. You're placing your attention and focus on that plant because now you're taking the action step of cultivating it, its growth, through watering it. And that's how we manifest in this realm. We manifest by putting our attention in the direction of where we want to put it and where we care, but for the step of taking actions towards that. That's what creates reality. That is what's missing from our common terminology of the law of attraction. The law of attraction is not disconnected from the embodiment of our actions. So we have the non-physical aspect of care, which is the energy of our attention. And that stream of focus is what brings in the energetic materials, the energetic attention that flows into creation to begin that process. But we need to take those action steps of nurturing something into creation, just like watering that plant. Because if we don't take those action steps in, we will not create. Now, a very common misconception within the spirit of this age is that we believe that due to the law of attraction, if we focus our attention on something negative, that we're feeding that negative reality and we're feeding our energy to create more of that negative timeline and more of that negative manifestation. But now that we know that care is the driving force behind all of creation, now we can put aside this outdated version of the law of attraction that says only focus on what you want more of. Because now we know that it takes conscious sentience, which is our awareness. And when we feed our attention and our energy is flowing in that direction, now we are bringing awareness to it. So it is the awareness of what is being looked at that now can have the proper attention, can now have the proper action to nurture that manifestation and nurture that version of reality into health. None of this will make sense at all unless we realize that care equals actions here. What actions are we going to take to nurture something into health? What actions are we going to take to empower a certain version of reality so that it becomes a positive manifestation? Manifestation is to take action. Now, in my video, Awaken Sacred Masculinity, I talk about how the term man comes from manifestation. And some people thought that I was just being cute and playing with words. No, this is esoteric knowledge, so you're not going to be able to Google it. in the esoteric field, manifestation means to take actions to create. And the term man comes from hands. And hands are the action, they are the extensions that do the bidding of what? In esotericism, hands are the actions of the heart. Isn't that funny? How manifesting something, even in this esoteric, not well-known etymology, is still referring to how care is sentience at a larger level of reality. And sentience now has these extensions called arms and hands. And the hands are taking actions towards what they care about, what they're placing their attention on in existence. Do we all care that our neighbors are nurtured because they bring home groceries and because we watch them put those groceries inside their mouth to make sure that they're real? Of course we do. The biggest problems that the collective consciousness runs into when it's focusing its attention and taking actions to create something is that we don't take the correct actions towards whatever we're placing our attention on. And that's usually when we're not fully aware of what's going on really in reality. So if we're not fully aligned with truth, then we can't take the correct actions that will manifest and create the positive manifestations or the positive reality and the positive timelines that we want to experience. So we could be taking actions all day long, but they're not correct actions that are fully informed. That's why it's so important for us to become aware. Because if we're not aware, then we could take actions in whatever direction that our attention is focused on. And they could be actually really counterintuitive actions. They could be actions that help feed a negative timeline or a negative version of reality. So action needs to be informed. It needs to come from awareness for it to really create a positive outcome. And that's why we see so many people who are saying, pay attention over here, pay attention over here, take these actions over here, take these actions over here. And they're making actions going straight to hell. Because it's one, we have to know what's going on with the higher level of reality, how reality works. And then from there, now we start taking actions to nurture whatever we want that is positive into manifestation. You don't just take actions because we're coming from a really unaligned, imbalanced state that is coming from a trauma-informed level of consciousness. Because what we see all the time is that if we're coming from a lower level of consciousness, if we're still coming from separation consciousness, there's too many blind spots in our awareness for us to actually take true beneficial action towards something. So when it comes to care, it's what we care about, placing our attention in that direction and taking the positive and informed conscious actions that will nurture that reality into a positive manifestation. Care is so important that dark occultists have to do a collective ritual just to bind care and keep humanity and our collective consciousness disconnected from care. Because that's how you create reality. So if you know about care and you know what to place your attention on and you know how to nurture and cultivate that, you get completely different versions of reality. You get completely positive timelines now. So in order to make sure that care is not known and that it's bound, you have people suppressing that knowledge just so they can continue controlling and casting their spells upon the collective so that the collective loses touch with how to create reality and the collective now becomes enslaved to those who know how to create reality. That's why knowledge is power. Now, the same is true for the opposite. If you only focus upon negative versions of reality and you only focus your attention on negative manifestations without bringing in that higher level of conscious sentience and without bringing in that higher level of conscious actions, now you continue to activate and you continue to get more of that negative reality or that negative manifestation. So this works both ways. If we don't place our conscious attention on something in order to nurture it into health and a positive timeline or a positive manifestation, it will turn negative or remain negative. But also, if we just hyper-focus upon whatever is negative and we bring our hypervigilant and our blind spots into that creation, then our actions aren't even coming from an aligned or powerful space anyways, and that will continue to feed negative timelines. So it's very important to be aware of these feedback loops that we could get stuck in when we don't have a full comprehension of what care is, because it's multifaceted. And like I said, all of the deepest and most important esoteric concepts are going to have more than one manifestation or more than one way that it expresses itself. So we need to know all of a concept and not just one dimension of it. I hope this has helped you define what you care about. Make sure to subscribe to my channel for higher dimensional guidance through spiritual awakening. See you next time.